name is Saul Colt. I am the founder and creative director of the Idea Integration Company based in Toronto, but we work all over the world. Any brand that isn't trying to stand out, in the crowd or trying to take chances or do things that are not irresponsible, but definitely, a little different, they're the brands that win.
Right.
You find me a brand that's fourth in their category and want to be like 3 or 2.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are willing to take some chances, willing to do some cool stuff, and really embrace, a different thought process. You're not going to go from 4 to 2 by just buying more Instagram ads.
Yeah.
I tell all the brands I work with that they have to be expressive. People want to love the brands they use.
Right.
And the brands that don't take chances are, they're going to either plateau, they're going to go out of business, or they're just going to be like zombie companies where, they may have a business and everything, but they're never going to be like a tier 1 brand or a brand that really takes off.
Founded in 2017, StartWell is Toronto's independent hub for innovators to collaborate. Our podcasts relate perspectives from the world's most diverse urban population to reflect unique insights into global business, media, and culture. So we can just start chatting, Saul, the man with his face on everything he owns.
That's right.
Why don't we start with you introducing yourself?
Okay, so I'm Saul Colt. I'm the founder of the Idea Integration Company. I have been running a word-of-mouth experiential marketing and advertising agency. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary this past November. People in Canada may know me from my time at FreshBooks, but I've worked with Nike, eBay, Twitter, HP, hundreds of Canadian startups, Rogers, the list goes on and on and on. And, I like to say I'm the guy you come to if you're a brave brand or a brand that wants to be brave, because I like to take calculated risks and take chances to build brands. I think that, we can get into it or not get into it, but I think it's such a noisy time right now.
I love that. Let's go straight into the goods, man.
I think any brand that isn't trying to stand out, in the crowd or trying to take chances or do things that are not irresponsible, but definitely, a little different, they're the brands that win.
Right.
And the brands that don't take chances are, they're going to either plateau, they're going to go out of business, or they're just going to be like zombie companies where, they may have a business and everything, but they're never going to be like a tier 1 brand or a brand that really takes off. So just look at X, and I refuse to call it Twitter anymore.
Yeah.
What Twitter was a beautiful thing, and now it's something different. But you look at X, and if you don't pay the $15 a month to get a blue check mark, they actually throttle your reach. So I have, 20,000 followers, not a super high number, but whatever. And I looked at my analytics. I don't really spend that much time on X anymore. And about 100 people see my posts now. 100 people based on 20,000 followers is crazy. So you either have to do something really amazing to catch people's eyes, or just flood a ton of money into creating awareness. And, I don't like paying for awareness.
Right.
Well, I think you pay for awareness, but instead of giving it to a platform, I'd rather do a spectacle, do something really crazy, get 10,000 people talking about something, and let them start the conversation on social, and then, the brand can pour gas on it.
See, I think this is interesting, actually. It's very interesting. It's fascinating to me, is this idea that the account used to be, or the branded account used to be the channel that people purchase conduit to audience, right? On these advertising platforms that we call social networks. But yeah, now there's absolutely no guarantee that your access to that audience that you develop is owned for 1, authentic for 2, and interested for 3, because they're blitzed with information all day long, on and off ad platform, social network. So it is really interesting that I think developing or I guess extending your brand into other space online is really, really important, and putting the power into the user, and the potential customer to be able to articulate your
And
mission.
offline, I think, uh, events large and small,
Mm,
really, now's the time to bring them back. We had a conversation before
yeah,
you hit record. We won't say who we're talking about, but you said that this person, didn't leave their house
right.
during the pandemic. I think we're at a point now where people are really looking, at least I believe people are really looking to try to get back to that pre-pandemic lifestyle. It's been a couple years. There's no reason, conventions, conferences, things are back.
Yep.
Maybe not in full force, but they're coming back. You know, there's no better way to show love for a client or a customer than take them for dinner, take them golfing, do all these things. And brands are still so hesitant to put budget towards that, that the brands that do will win. It all comes back to you get rewarded for doing extra. And I think the pandemic really, scared a lot of people,
Hmm.
myself included.
Sure.
It changed everything we thought of about how, everyone's like, oh, digital grew 10 years in
Right.
it grew 10 years in 10 months or all that stuff. But now we're seeing that it's all course correcting,
Hmm.
and all that stuff. So do we go back as if the pandemic never started? Probably not. Do we eliminate all the e-commerce and things that we built in that time? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
But man, if there's one thing that dropped off the table was showing affection for your customers and actually, trying to win them through, you know, surprise and delights and all sorts of things. And if there's anything that should come back, it's spectacles and marketing stunts and really like showing your customers that they made the right choice, dealing with your brand. And that's something that we've been doing forever. And it's crazy to me that I go in and pitch this to brands, and brands just they don't think it's worth the money anymore,
Mm.
and two, they're so afraid of their own jobs. Nobody wants to do anything, even a little bit edgy or different or anything anymore. Which, like, man, if that's the case, like we're in trouble. Like, just hand over businesses to AI because they're going to be soulless. They're going to be not fun. They're not going to be interesting. And, everything's going to become utility. And that should never be the case.
So I like this. I like both of those points. The first one, let's dig into the lack of budget.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh Definitely we've seen it across the board here at Startwell, right? No matter what we're selling to customer, and we're a B2B business, right? So it's all companies that are our customers, not end users or their employees. But in 2021, things seemed like obviously everyone was looking after their families and they were at home, and that was cool. People started coming back to kind of like gather a little bit in 2022. Um, 2023, CFO's office owned all procurement decisions suddenly, Q1. And it was a weird year last year where, like, a lot of organizations, small or large, put into place a lot of these controls, financial controls, quite possibly as a kind of a, definitely not as a proactive, certainly as a reactive effect to, like, I think starting to kind of accept the reality that those 2 years that were lost in the pandemic, no one earned anything. And, like, everyone shuffled their paper around to say, "Oh, well, the books look clean, but there's no cash in the bank,
Hmm.
and we don't know who our customers are anymore." So I think they all freaked out last year. And certainly in a time when reach is more important than anything, and new customer discovery and development is more important than everything for a lot of companies. I think they also, and it might be reason number 2 that's kind of contributed to this, but there seems to be this confusion within organization across the economy, definitely in Canada, that we don't know necessarily how to de-risk outreach. We don't know how to de-risk our access to market. And so I've seen this definitely, and I've talked to a few of our um, customers who are sitting on the programmatic side, right, on the kind of Google Ads side, that spend is going up depending on industry segment in Google Ads, but efficacy is going down and the exponential cost of advertising is ridiculous, where customer acquisition cost is unrealistic for most industries now, through Google specifically. Now, again, it comes back to the social network algorithm problem of like if your ads don't function as a product, like the advertising mechanism is not a product anymore. It's this like amorphous thing. You can't trust it. So what can you trust? You could trust human connection.
hmm So I don't know if, and I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know if this story is going to answer your question, but I think it's going to get us to an interesting place. I spent a year working with the online accounting platform Zero,
Yep.
and at the time, the CMO and the president were two gentlemen named Andrew Lark and Russ Fujioka, and both of them had worked together for like 15 years together. One was the global CMO of Dell Computers, and the other was the VP of marketing at Dell Computers. So they had a history together. They came over and sort of took over Zero. And I really, to this day, I love and respect both of these people. They taught me a great deal about a lot of things. And Russ, I consider still a close friend. I was really worried when Russ was hired. I was there before Russ I predated him by a month or two. And, like this is a guy who I just thought wasn't going to understand what I do and is going to throw me out the door instantly. He's a numbers guy. He's a metrics guy. He's a KPI guy, all that stuff. And we sat down when he started and he said, I don't understand what you do, but everyone keeps telling me it's working. So this is what we're going to do. You have zero budget. You have a net zero budget.
Mm.
If you want to do anything,
You have to earn it.
write me a business case and tell me why you should be doing it. It could be the most crazy thing you've ever thought of, but just at least put, 2 or 3 paragraphs down on a piece of paper explaining to me who this is for, what we think we can get out of it, why we should be doing it, and why we should be doing it now.
Right.
And at the time, I was this like hot shot, fly by the seat of my pants. And just that small little, 4-paragraph exercise is something I still do to this day, because ideas are easy.
Yeah.
It's like, let's throw someone off a roof, and they'll die, and we'll get all this
Everyone
attention.
will look at it.
Everyone will look at it. They'll be wearing a T-shirt with that logo and all that stuff. But they let me do skywriting. They let me disrupt a competitor's, $20 million user conference. They let me get away with really crazy things because I could actually verbalize or articulate why this is important to the brand, why we should be doing it, why now is the right time. And, having like no budget was actually interesting because I ended up spending a lot of money and the investment returned. And as I earned trust with these people, they let me ask for more money and do bigger things and stuff like that. And I've taken that even with some customers that, clients I work with now, people who say they have no budget. And I say, well, guess what? If you don't do anything, this is probably what's going to happen. But if you do a few things, so here's 3 things I'd like to do with your brand. Let's do the small one first.
Right.
See that it didn't break anybody. It didn't hurt anybody. Nobody got harmed. The brand is still thing. People are talking about you.
Yeah.
Then let's do phase 2. Then let's do phase 3. So instead of me going into somebody and saying, give me, $200,000, I'm going to do all this stuff. I usually go in and say, like, I'd like to spend about $500,000 with you over the next 12 months, but let's start by spending 10. Let's start by spending 30 and actually build up the trust with these people because everyone is just so afraid of losing their job. Like I had a phone call this morning with somebody who I share these stories. I never say who I'm talking to
Sure,
because it's not fair to out these people, but someone who's very, very well known in the Toronto startup community, someone who's had success after success after success. And he basically says he feels like he's unemployable. He's in his late 40s and can't get interviews, can't get anything. So like we're trying to find ways to work together and stuff like that. But it's crazy to me, like how different the the world is,
Yeah.
or even just the community is right now, for people. And I don't believe in the ageism conversation.
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't,
either. It's not
yeah,
like
good people do good work gets paid for and stuff like that.
also, I mean, this is a ageism does play into it in some ways. Ageism does, and so does the corruption, at least I will say it like this, of pyramid scheme economics in,
Hmm.
technology in the tech sector. Um, in a sector of the economy that has not only by politicians, by average Joe public, been lauded for so long, if that's the right word, as the the seat of innovation in our economy and the promise for the future economy. You see a lot of dogmatism, and a lot of bias, and a lot of tainted thinking in this sector, fueled by the promise of return on investment for investors.
Hmm.
And it's a really interesting thing because for a decade plus in Canada, like who really has funded venture capital in this country? It's not necessarily driven by independently wealthy LPs, who have a vision to support the next best thing that will take Canada out to the moon and have our brand on, the back of peacekeepers' backpacks, supporting the world's goodness. It's instead, half of it's the government through the BDC, and
Hmm.
the other half is anonymous funding sources that see it as like, a little experimental sector to invest in, perhaps. And yet, the people placing capital, not everybody, and for our friends who are VCs who are watching this and listening, I'm not calling you out here, but there are so many employees placing funds acting like their bosses. And anyone in private equity around the world like looks at VC and laughs at these
I
people.
think we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
It's like, so again, gonna go into a story, and hopefully at the end it'll make some sense. But when the pandemic hit, I went 8 months without any revenue. All our customers sort of panicked. We were doing a lot of in real world activities and events and things like that. And it was really scary.
Right.
Like we burned through all our cash reserves, and I made sure all my employees were still paid. I wasn't getting paid, but everyone else was paid. I don't think I'm a really great business person. I think I'm a really good creative.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I'm proud of is, like we didn't lay anybody off. Everyone got paid and stuff like that. That stuff I'm proud of. But, like it was a really, really difficult time. And I, as a person, as I think most people changed a little bit, and I started playing it safe. And as someone who's never played it safe my whole career, it took me about a year to realize that I was playing it safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it really like hurt my own feelings. Like the
Yeah.
work was still good and stuff like that, but like I wasn't going around, being, inappropriate with people. I wasn't being myself. I wasn't wearing my chains. I wasn't, as I don't think I wore jeans for a year. I was basically
You
just
were
given
off
up.
brand.
Yeah, I'd given up on myself. And, like I'd say it was only about 6 or 8 months ago
Yeah.
that I like was just like, I don't know if I can swear on this,
Swear, we don't
but
care.
I was just like, fuck, man, like I got to get back to being myself.
Right.
And one of the things about getting back to being myself was, um, I built a list of 150 companies that I wanted to work with,
Mm-hmm.
and I pitched all of them. We closed a small handful of them. But the funny thing was when I looked at this list of companies, there wasn't a lot of tech on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I built my career working with tech, but there was a lot of like regional soda companies
Yeah.
and candy companies and streetwear brands
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it wasn't that I wanted to stretch my wings. I tell people I can make any company better because it's not about the company, it's about my process.
Yeah.
But none of these brands at the top of my list were tech companies. Like I think that I'd burned out on tech companies. Like
Right.
I worked for I've worked for a couple billionaires, and the last big tech company I worked for, well, it was a small tech company with a big fancy founder. And we worked 6 months on building a really cool brand and product for this guy. And he just got bored and shelved the whole thing
Wow.
before we ever went to market. So there was never even proof that what we came up with worked or didn't work.
Right.
He was just like, I'm going to go on vacation for a year. And then I look around at that and I'm just like, I don't want to be in these positions
Right.
anymore. So,
Right.
like, and I just find working with people, and I'll still work with tech. And I have a tech client that I work with right now that I'm very proud of, and I like them very much. But there's something about working with people that are a little out of the bubble, maybe a little bit more grateful, a little bit more appreciative, and are
Yeah.
willing to take some chances. We did a project that's coming out, I think in 2 weeks right now. It's one of the funniest things I think we've ever done.
Hmm.
It's for a regional soda company. And every time I meet a new client, I sit down with them for an hour. I ask them every question. I've got like these 30 questions, and I try to really understand them as people, their brand, what's working, what isn't working. And they said that, we've got the best root beer in the world, but nobody knows about us. And that really stuck with me. So we created a whole campaign it's all animated. It's not real people,
Yeah.
but it's a man and a woman sitting in a chair across from each other, just like you and me.
Sure.
And the woman says to the man, we're probably the only two people in the world that know about Frost Stop root beer. And the guy pulls a gun out of his pocket. He shoots the woman. He goes, now there's only one. And it's just like this bizarre thing where we're going to build a whole brand about how nobody knows about them.
Right. But it's so
And
sensational.
yeah.
It's great. I love
So,
it.
but like, I don't think you could get away with stuff like that with like,
With a tech company that has everything riding on it and like, oh, we can't get the next funding round because this is too
exactly.
out there. And
Mhm.
it's all about, it's true. It's very interesting, this idea that you're reflecting on playing it safe,
Mm.
and the hesitancy, I think, born out of the, I don't know. I don't really think, definitely looking at Toronto and looking at Canada and looking at the branding of the pandemic, through it, at least from the government's messaging and education, responsibility through it, the fear mongering around it, and then the lack of kind of, there was no makeup sex, and I think that because of that, Canadians are feeling this, like, this guilt inside of them, but also this kind of grief. And it's like all these emotions inside about like those lost couple of years of their life that they haven't, been able to verbalize and socialize and get past. Yeah, companies definitely are like that. And it's not just the tech sector. There's so many companies that are fearful and aren't also staffed with people who are enabled maybe to take ownership of their brand.
Mhm.
Right. And I think part of that has been also this like building tension for at least a decade of the overpromise of programmatic advertising. And so there's this question of like, okay, well, how can we be authentic, with our customers and with the people that we want to be our customers, if we are just employees who have a foot out the door, either because we're afraid of getting shanked and fired or because we don't want to be here and we're just getting a paycheck for now.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting. I've talked to people at some airlines, very big airlines, that are in very, you would think, roles that, you could never, pilots or uh, hospitality staff or whatever you want to call them, flight attendants, that were shocked that they got let go during the pandemic, and then shocked
Mhm.
that they got rehired, and shocked that they got fired again, and then shocked that they got rehired again. And it was like, my whole life is this identity that I have because I thought I was specialized labor in some way, but I'm not. I'm
Mhm.
expendable.
Everybody is replaceable, even like myself, even yourself, and that's like, I've I've always been driven by like this balance of fear and spite. Like
Tell us more about spite.
well, I've always been told, you can't do that, and I
Yeah.
want to like show people they're wrong,
Right.
and then tell them they were wrong, and then remind them a year later they were wrong.
Rub it in their
Um,
face.
so it's like I've always, I've I've had wonderful opportunities. I've been in the right place at the right time probably twice.
Wow.
Okay, I haven't profited financially off it, but I've profited you know, infamously, if that's even the right term to use
Mm,
in this stuff. But, like I wouldn't have a career if I wasn't at the beginning of social media. I wouldn't have the career I have if I didn't have the freedom I had at FreshBooks. I wouldn't have a career if I haven't, if I didn't decide early that, I was going to use every social media platform as just my resume
hmm.
and just keep beating people over the head with look what I did and piss people off because they think it's gross. But it's like I have to do it because no one else is going to like promote myself or anything like that. And and I've had to have sex with a lot of women to get where I am today. Just continuously boosting my own brand and the myth of Saul and everything that I've done. And I wouldn't have changed anything that I've done, but at the same time, I've rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Hmm.
I do a boot camp workshop, whatever you want to call it, about personal branding, where I reverse engineer my own brand, and I tell people that my own brand has been the best and worst thing I've ever created for
Sure,
myself
sure.
because it's opened 100 doors for really cool opportunities, but it's closed 1,000 doors.
Yeah,
Like
because
nobody's going to hire me as a VP of a bank. No one's going to hire me a thing because whatever. I like to make penis jokes and stuff like that. I didn't during the pandemic. That was safe, Saul. That was a thing. But I'm back.
yeah, he's back. You heard it here first.
but like I have something coming up for one of my clients that when people look at it, they're gonna be like, you can't do that. And it's like, well, why can't you?
Right.
I just did it.
Yeah.
So don't tell me I can't do it. We literally just did it.
So
So it's like, and I think that, you know, I, I'm such a proud Canadian, but I think I have a little bit more of an American, you know, American flag bikini, AK-47, poster kind of mentality where it's like, you know, I live what I preach when I talk about, standing out from the crowd and not being quiet and
right.
all these things. I'm very opinionated, and I let my opinions live out there in the world. And if you don't want to work with me because I believe a woman should have the right to abortion, don't work with me.
Hmm.
If you don't want to work with me for any of my other crazy beliefs, don't work with me. Like, you're missing out on some great work.
But at the same time, I mean, look, I think there's a couple things here. One is about freedom of expression and also the
Mm,
ability to be able to express yourself freely and be able to uh, carry your identity in public, right? Which is
mhm,
at odds with the kind of Protestant ethic and, 9 to 5 factory mentality of our office sector in Canada.
mm,
The other thing is, if you're an early internet adopter, and it meant everything to you when you got online in the 90s, like the that milieu was about freedom of expression with the ability
mhm,
to maintain monikers, right? Like it was hip hop. The way I look at it, like
mhm,
early internet was hip hop. And the new schoolers might not get this, that you could be yourself and be someone else at the same time.
mhm.
And it was something we all co-celebrated, and there was a kind of a fun theatricality to it. So I feel like, yeah, in the last decade, that's been lost with this, like, kind of doomed from the start quest for truth in this, like, news versus social media debate. And the question of, like, is your profile your real self? Well, not if you've been brainwashed by the
Mhm,
advertising medium that you grew up with, right?
mhm,
That's very different than if you know who you are and you expect everyone who looks at you to know who they are to be able to interact.
mhm,
And I think this is the quandary we're in now, where if people didn't experience that early internet or the world before the internet, this the idea of branding, especially using digital identities, has changed.
mhm.
What can you say about that you might have garnered as insight from client work on this kind of like willingness for brands to be expressive?
I tell all the brands I work with that they have to be expressive. People want to love the brands they use. Like I can tell you, I might be a little different, but I think all the clothing I wear comes from, less than 10 brands. Like it's just like it's like when I find something I like, and by like, I mean the whole brand, not
Hmm.
just the clothing, not just the fit. I
Sure.
want to know what they're about. I want to know, like, Nike's one of my favorite brands in the world. And, when I see Nike, uh, you know, stand up for Tiger Woods after he has an affair with all these people, or with Kaepernick and all that stuff. It's like we're with you for a reason. It's like I really like Roots, and I don't know if they stand for the same things they used to, but I was always sort of fascinated by the Roots boys. I know they're not part of the company anymore, but like that was interesting to me. A couple Americans that came to Canada to sort of show us how to do it, and
Right.
and stuff like
Right.
that. I like there's brands, like I like brands that don't cower at the littlest bit of adversity, and
Yeah.
things like that. And like I don't wish it. I don't think adversity is makes brands stronger or anything, but I do really appreciate brands that, sort of tough out hard times, and stuff like that. And like everybody is going to have an issue. Everybody is going to come up with something that's uncomfortable. Even in my career, I've had, people like attack me, for things that I didn't even do and stuff like that. And I was just fortunate enough that through all my bravado and whatever, really really good to people. So a lot
Hmm.
of people came to my defense and told this person they were wrong. But it's like I think brands.
What? Sorry. What was that situation? What happened? This sounds
Oh,
like a
just
particular anecdote.
Oh, yeah, a long, long time ago,
Yeah.
when I was working at FreshBooks, I've told the story. I was working at FreshBooks. We were doing an event in Toronto, and one of the speakers on the panel was a guy who was charged with like some sexual deviant
Oh.
stuff. And I was the first person who knew he was charged because I had a Google alert for all the speakers.
Okay.
I told him he couldn't speak at the event,
Yeah.
like the minute I heard about it. And just because of my making stupid jokes, like I've slept with many women to get to where I am
Yeah.
today,
Which is a shock value statement.
they assumed that I was part of his like
Oh
deviant
no.
thing. And like I've had women work for me every evolution of my career and my current company, and everyone stood up and they're like, it's a joke,
Right.
get over it. Like I've been in hotel rooms with him 100 times, and he sits at the other end and says, don't come anywhere near me. But it's like brands need a personality because there's so many brands doing the exact same thing.
Right. Okay. So this is getting into the maybe the differentiation or identification of brand versus marketing
Hmm.
in
Oh, they're
some way.
very, very different.
So break it down for the people that are watching or listening that don't know your lens on this identification.
Well, so if you think of brand marketing and sales, so is how brand is really how you feel about the company. It's not your logo, it's not your anything. It's literally how you feel about the company.
Yeah.
Marketing is a element or a layer above that to create desire, and sales is a element or layer above that to get you actually part with your money. But the brand itself is like, why do you exist? Why is this important? Why should people care?
Right.
It's not the colors you choose, like all those things. Like I had a BD call this morning, and the guy goes, how come you're not suggesting we change our logo? And I go, because I don't think logos actually make people buy anything.
Yeah.
Like your logo's fine. Like we've got way more important stuff to fix your brand
Right.
than your visual identity and stuff like that. But when you think of brands, like think of think of Apple versus Microsoft.
Yeah.
You may not be able to describe each of their brands intimately, but you know how Apple makes you feel versus Microsoft.
Right.
Like, and Microsoft is a great company. They've made a bunch of people really rich, but nobody's lining up like at Yorkdale to the Microsoft store, at 6 a.m. to get anything that they're buying. But at the Apple store every September when they release a new iPhone, it's all about it because people identify with the brand. I hate using Apple as an example.
The good
for
obvious
anything.
one, right?
Well, I just think that Apple is a once in a not even a generation. It's a once in a lifetime brand that nobody could ever replicate.
Yeah.
There's never going to be another Apple. Like, they talk about lightning striking. They've lightning struck this brand like 4 times.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you could learn from Apple and take to your company and do it. But think of the difference between, like Porsche and Volvo, or Porsche and Ford.
There is something in this, though, because this is about like challenger brand in some way, too. And brands establishing an identity amongst the people that would have an emotional reaction to them in market, amongst their competitors, and in relation to their competitors. Often cases, I think, in the last few years with digital marketing, a lot of brands that are new upstarts trying to establish, I should say a lot of companies that are new upstarts try to sidestep the brand to be able to focus on functional aspects of their product or service, to push marketing on people. And then if you're in a race for the fastest chip, that's what you're in a race for. You're not in a race for like the most lovable, easily holdable device. And those are very different things, right? So the challenger brands are interesting because they have this kind of identification of saying, we need to be out there. We need to be known. And what we're known for is going to evoke emotion.
Yeah, and challenger brands, they're the brands I love working with. You find me a brand that's 4th in their category and want to be like 3 or 2.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are willing to take some chances, willing to do some cool stuff, and really embrace, like a different thought process. Like you're not going to go from 4 to 2 by just buying more Instagram ads.
Yeah.
You're not going to go 4 to 2 by, changing your labeling and packaging and stuff like that. You have to actually do things, and those things could be, there's 100 different things you could do. There's not one like single thing. And that's why when any brand comes to us, we don't sell packages, we don't sell anything. We sit down and we listen to the client and we hear what they want. But in fact, what we do is we run them through our process, and then we tell them what they need. So it's not even a case of like you telling me I want, PR, and I'm going to tell you how we're going to do PR for you.
Right. Yeah.
It's really like, I'm going to tell you, you think you want PR. What you really want is this, this, and this.
Right.
And maybe you don't work with us because you're just so dead set on all you want is PR or whatever. But that's always been our process. And it's worked really for us and against us, because some people are just like, well, you're not listening to me. This is what I want. And I'm like, but like our reputation is at stake here too. And if we just do what you say, you're not going to get the results you want. And then you're going to shit talk us, behind our backs. Like you came to us because we're subject matter experts in this, and you either want to ride with us or not. And that's why, we lose probably, 10%, 20% of all our proposals just based on the fact that people think that we misunderstood their ask.
That's a pretty good batting average, though.
You know what? If we can get in a room with somebody, we're at about a 75% close rate. It's getting in the room that's like really difficult.
Let's talk about that, okay?
Yeah.
So firstly, let's talk about the we. Who's the we?
Got a team of a bunch of people. Our senior leadership. It's myself, gentleman named Bill Morrison, who worked 20 years at The Simpsons. He was the last editor-in-chief of Mad Magazine before
Mm.
Warner Brothers disbanded. So he's our creative team lead, and he's we brought over with Bill a big chunk of people who worked at Mad Magazine and The Simpsons. So when it comes to creative side of the business, there's nobody better than us. We've got a historical creative team, and it's really interesting. These guys aren't bogged down by working in tech for 20 years. Their whole careers have been putting a mirror up to society and finding those nuggets of truth, which is what advertising is all about and marketing is all about. So it's really interesting that we found a bunch of guys who've been making fake advertisements for 40 years, and now they make real advertisements for real brands. On the other side, we've got people from Facebook, we've got people from former Instagram, former Wall Street Journal. So we were at about 29 people. We're down to about 26
Okay.
right now. But it's that's why I'm honest with everybody. Like, I don't know if I'm the best person to run this business. I'm really good at BD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good at the creative side of stuff. But it's like I haven't filed our taxes for this year, which we're a couple months behind. So got to get on that tomorrow and things like that. So it's like if I could find somebody to run the business that I trusted and understood, what I was looking for, I'd love to just go back and working on client work all the time. But somebody needs to run the business, and somebody needs to be, staying up all night thinking about where we go next and who we talk to, and building the lists of 150 clients and stuff like that, and finding new people and all that stuff. So it's like I am. It's funny, bringing Bill in was a home run and a slam dunk, and he's made the company so much better, and he's a huge asset to everything we do. But other than Bill, um, I don't trust myself to hire senior people anymore,
Mm.
because I brought in a chief. Uh, he was supposed to head like BD. He asked for chief revenue officer was the title he asked for. I don't care about titles. You can call
Oh,
yourself
that's a
anything you
red
want.
flag.
Yeah.
I always feel like it's a red flag when people ask for titles, especially
Mm,
if those titles are like standardized titles that are easy to put on a resume.
resume. Yeah.
If they come in and they say like monkey whisperer, I'm like, yeah, great, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You're a monkey whisperer.
So this guy came in, cost me a lot of money, and I closed more deals than he did in the same like sort of 6 month pilot thing. I hired other people to be like head of strategy, head of everything, and like I'm really good with creative people
Right.
because I understand creative people, but I don't trust myself to hire like a finance person or anything like that. I think like I've got like sucker tattooed on my face somewhere that you need a certain set of glasses to see or something. So those are things that I now basically like I have people that I trust a great deal, and I just go, you do the whole hiring process for me, because there's like the person's going to give me a sob story or something.
Yeah.
I'm going
yeah.
to want to help them, and then it's going to like I'm going to like burn through more cash and see
Right.
nothing for it.
So it sounds like you have a creative superpower team, like the
Mhm.
all stars. The work is. Are you? I guess how do you limit the scope of your work for clients?
Well, we usually set the scope, and that's through like our process that I created, where we pitch what we think the client needs, as opposed to what they're telling us they want.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, it's pretty clear. There's always scope creep, and we try to be really fair about it. And we only bill, after a certain point and stuff like that.
No, but what I mean is like you're not when a client has you're solving a need for a client, you're not answering it in the proposal every time with, okay, you really need an animated magazine or an animated TV show.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, stepping outside of what the kind of like core identities of those people are, and offering tangible assets or strategies to people. Like, what does your company take on, and also work with others to accessorize for like activations and
Okay,
campaigns?
so I would say anything illustrative, animated, anything, you know, anything like that, we do in house.
Okay.
All of our design work is done in house. All of our strategy is done in house. The things that we farm out uh, is less than you would think. But video production, we've got teams that we work with
Hmm.
that we really like, and seeing what you guys have here, we're going to be talking
Nice.
afterwards, and you're going to see a lot of me, hopefully in the future. But video production is something that we have, favored vendors that we work with,
Sure.
swag and stuff. We have favored vendors
Cool.
and things like that. But a lot of stuff is done in house. Like one of the projects we did um, just before the pandemic was we created a newspaper.
Hmm.
What we did was we created the cover, back cover, inside back cover of the New York Times of that day, and we had the front page story was of a client of ours, and we wrote it, and we created an exact copy, and we bought 500 copies of the New York Times, and we put our cover over the real cover, and we had T-shirts made that said complimentary New York Times, and we handed them to people walking on the subway
Yeah.
of the New York Times. And when people were on the subway reading the paper, we went and got sneaky pictures of like 25 different newspapers, all with our clients, like front page story and all stuff like that. So other than the printing, everything with that was done in house. We wrote the stories, we typeset it and everything, and we found someone that prints like broadsheet newspaper, and the paper didn't match the color 100%,
Yeah.
but nobody noticed, and I don't even think people realized that they were part of like a stunt or a prank. They just thought it's like, oh, look, a financial company is doing really well, they're on the cover of the New York Times and stuff like that. So
And then
and
how are those assets distributed? Like, did that go out through own channels of the advertiser, or did you get PR, like get coverage?
Oh, we got PR covered.
Yeah.
Like once, so the papers were distributed by hand.
Hmm.
All the video and photos we collected, we saved. We didn't push it out the same day because we wanted to pitch it to media first.
Okay.
And the pitch was, brand does something really crazy. It's business unusual. How do you get on the front page of the New York Times? You just print your own. And then once we got media coverage, then it all went through social. We had the actual media coverage pushed through social. Then we did a couple behind the scenes stuff for another week or so.
Nice.
Yeah.
But that's it. So this is a great expression of, or a good case study of this kind of thinking outside of the box,
hmm
taking things into your own hand, and being able to like deal with the consequences.
Oh yeah,
Right.
I've been. We once created for it was for Zero. One day we just decided, like every day, every calendar day is like a stupid, like today's, chocolate chip day or whatever.
Right. There's some
So
holidays.
yeah, so we created today is and it was Small Business Accounting Awareness Day, and we went to the state capitol in Sacramento, and on the lawn of the state capitol building, we got a food truck, and we were giving free sandwiches to everybody. We had 100 accountants there, and we were trying to get the delegates, the lawmakers, whatever, to come out and talk to thing. And we had all this signage and balloon arches, and like had a guy for no reason whatsoever dressed as a California bear. It was just in like a really bad bear costume, taking pictures with people. And we got politicians to come out and talk to people, and we shot video and photographs, but
Yeah.
we didn't have permission to assemble
Sure.
on the lawn of things. So I was detained in the Capitol jail for about 2 hours or so.
Wow.
We were only planning on being there for the lunch hour anyways.
Hmm.
So it was resolved by me promising that we would just leave.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to leave anyways. So
Right.
it was no big deal. I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, yep, lunch is over. We only booked the truck for 90 minutes. So it's like, absolutely. I will make everybody like leave as soon as you let me go. And they let me go. But that was a little scary. But I do a lot of guerrilla stuff without
Hmm.
permission. We do all sorts of things, and if there's one thing I've gotten really good is speaking with police and stuff like that, and
Getting
and
yourself out of pickles.
getting myself out of pickles is right. But like I said, at the beginning, like brands need to do this stuff.
Right.
It's what resonates with people. It's what stands out.
How can brands themselves, how can companies take ownership of their brand to be able to not be cavalier, but to be confident, let's say, with their brand? There's this whole thing of like outsourcing, right? In North America and in Canada, like hire this company, they're experts. Like hire you guys, of course, you're experts in what you do.
Mhm.
But there's also this thing of, well, how do you also learn from the experts to educate ourselves to be able to empower our staff to talk to customers,
Well, so we do a lot of like creative boot camps where we'll come into a company
Mm.
and actually come up with the idea with them. And, whether they want to do it themselves or do it with us afterwards. But, it's not that different from when I was talking about pitching clients
Right.
where I say, I want this big chunk of money from you, but let's start small first. Brands should start a little small, realize no one's going to get hurt. It's not going to like harm them.
Yeah.
And then keep building. And maybe, they do one themselves, they bring in someone like us to do another and keep going up like the ladder and stuff. But it's like, you look at, I haven't been to South by Southwest in a few years.
Facebook told me 10 years. And I looked at Facebook and said, when was the last time I logged in?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it's been probably that long.
Yeah, so I haven't been to South by in a handful of years, but I did go for 7 years straight at a time. And, now I look at it and it's hard to tell because I'm not there, feet on the ground or anything, but it looks like the activations have like taken over.
Mm.
And every brand has its own restaurant. Every brand has, they're taking all the retail storefronts and making them whatever and stuff
Right.
like that. That's not where you start.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that you've got, the people to really understand. So I always tell brands, it actually like and this is another reason we lose projects. I'm not trying to impress you as the person who's writing the check for me to work with them. I'm trying to impress your customer. So I do all the research on the customer, not the VP of marketing. And a lot of people just go in and blow the smoke up the VP of marketing's wherever
Yeah.
and try to close the deal or anything. A lot of times, like I've been on calls where I know more about their customers than they do.
Of course. Yeah.
And I'm like, your customers will love this. But he's like, I don't like it.
Right.
And I go, but it's not for you.
Right.
You probably don't even use your own products or you get them free.
Yeah.
Like my mission is to keep the lights on in my own business and the business of all my clients.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's funny to see people who are afraid to do what I do because they don't like it or they don't get it. Not because they don't think it's good or not.
Yeah.
It goes back to Russ telling me I don't understand what you do, but people tell me it works. There has to be a little bit of trust, but also a little bit of like freedom to do stuff. And I tell all the people say, oh, well, do you execute your own things or do you just, write up ideas? I said, I 99% of the time, I'd like to execute my own work because there's so much nuance in a marketing stunt or in really anything.
Mm.
And like, if you're doing something guerrilla, nothing ever goes right.
Right.
So you have to like have plan B, plan C, plan D. Like one of my favorite stories, I've got my bag here. One of my favorite brands is a guy named John Y. JohnY.com, JONYWE.com. He makes leather belts, leather wallets, guitar straps, all sorts of stuff.
Hmm.
And he's created this cool way of basically tattooing on leather. So they're really colorful, really vibrant and stuff like that. And
Oh, I saw that bag you had. Yeah.
yeah, so we did. I never thought I'd be like a sling guy, and I still don't know if I really am.
Mhm.
But he sent it to me, and I love him, so I wear it. But I don't know if it's really me, but I like supporting him. He's my friend. But we did a stunt for him where we went through our process. We pitched him a bunch of ideas, and he sells belts. And belts, like we netted out that belts are like the forgotten or the unseen fashion accessory.
Oh yeah.
So we did a guerrilla fashion show
Yeah.
at a shopping mall. We didn't have permission to do it. The models were all naked except for one of his belts, breasts, vaginas, penises, the whole
Everything.
deal.
Oh my god.
We filmed the whole thing. So if you picture this, it was a little low production value, but we had GoPro cameras on the second story
Yeah.
of all the things. We had people with their phones and other cameras, like right where we were, and right in the middle of the food court, the busiest part of the mall, busiest part of the day, a guy literally just unrolls this giant red carpet.
Uh-huh.
4 models, 2 male, 2 female, drop their like trench coats,
Yeah.
completely naked except for these belts. Guy with a ghetto blaster, and they do 2 laps on the red carpet.
Wow.
And when we planned it out, we thought mall security was going to be there in
Sure,
like 10
right away,
seconds.
yeah.
So we had planned escape routes. As soon as you see something, you're going to run that way. We had it all planned out. We had like we drew pictures of the mall and where all the exits were and everything. And the mall security came over and they were just watching these people. So they're walking up and down, doing this whole
Didn't
thing.
want to touch him. Just
And
like
the models are looking at me like, what are we supposed to do? Like, we didn't think we were going to last this long. So at the end of it,
should we run or just put our coats back on?
well, that's what they did. They literally just put their clothes back on. We walked
Wow.
out very calmly and civilly. We edited out the putting the clothes back on.
Yeah.
In editing, we made it look like it was much
Wow.
more
Dramatic.
dramatic than it actually was. But you never know how things, when you don't have permission, you never know how things are going to like end up. So you have to be there and you have to be ready for anything and plan for the worst and all sorts of things. So, I've had people like take my idea, paid or not paid, try to do it without me. And it's just been a complete and absolute nightmare because they didn't plan for the worst.
Oh man, the execution is everything, and it's worth paying double for.
Well, I always tell people, like, you pay me to worry.
Right.
I worry about everything, and my worrying is actually future-proofing the whole thing, because I will like literally lie in bed sleepless thinking of every major thing that could go wrong.
Right.
And then we plug the hole.
Yep.
But if you're not worrying about anything and you're just like, oh, we're going to do this, is going to be fun. Like, you see me at an execution of a stunt or anything, I'm never smiling. I'm like Jason Bourne. I'm looking for somebody with a rifle, or something to shut this whole thing down. But that's what it takes to do this stuff properly and professionally.
Totally. That's why we have integrated studios that are built out.
Mm-hmm.
I said before we were rolling camera, I was telling you, like, I don't like setup and tear down. It's just not that. It's like all the variables. The variables can just drive you mad, So even for us, for production, it has to be a system. It has to be studio.
This is like what you have here is so impressive.
Thank you.
This is like Charlie Rose without the nudity with the interns and stuff. Like
Was
that.
he one of them?
Yeah.
Oh,
He used to invite girls into his home, and he'd answer the door with like an open robe and stuff. like that.
Charlie Rose.
Yes.
Thank you, Saul. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
This was very cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. It was fun.